Great. Thanks, Rudy. A couple of things to open up with. First, I want to give recognition to Sue Fillion, who's our manager for the CPF-funded Umgeni project. We didn't have a chance to put a presentation together. She's only been going 2 months now in the project, so hopefully this time next year we'll have a lot more to show in terms of the lessons we learned. Second thing, we've got apologies from Dr. Dion Nell, our head of biodiversity. He would have been here with us, but unfortunately had to be called in with our other work down in Cape Town. So, and the third thing is I'm going to be off brief to some extent today because I didn't quite connect with Rudy. We've had a bit of miscommunication over a couple of things, but I'm not going to talk about the details of the organisation, but I will refer to elements of it and what we're doing. So a very brief background to try and get a little bit back on brief. WWF internationally has been going since 1961. From 1968 there was the SA Nature Foundation established, and in 1995 that SA Nature Foundation became WWF South Africa and joined the fold formally, although there's been a long-term relationship with WWF International since '68. So that's really the background of where we are. Until about 6 years ago we were about 20 to 30 staff. Over the last 6 years we've grown to 100 staff. Primarily because we've shifted from releasing funding that we've been able to raise behind the brand and behind various other sort of partners that we had, and shift from actually releasing that to other partners, actually trying to internalize it and do the work ourselves in some areas. And that's really been the shift we've taken. That doesn't mean we stopped working with others, but to mention an example is the partnership with Wildlands that we're looking at growing out of the engagement with the hotspot, and look into the different strengths that different NGOs and corporates have in engaging different spaces. And the space at Wildlands, just giving recognition, Andrew, to you and your team for the great work you guys are doing, trying to really challenge the conservation sector to be pro with a strong economic basis to it, really changes the game. And just to some extent, what I'm going to allude to is saying this isn't about conservation at its core. There's conservation entrenched within the work we're doing, but actually a lot of the messaging and a lot of the way we're trying to approach things is actually how do we survive into the future. That's our reality. And so we've got to continue the species work. You've got to continue to understand the systems from a scientific perspective, but we've got to find a way to embed those in messages that make sense to people who are making land use decisions on a day-to-day basis. So I'm just going to try and allude to an approach that we're trying to take. This isn't a new approach. This is an approach that's been tested around the world at the moment. And Paul, where's Paul? The work that you're doing about taking things to a landscape scale and looking at partnerships together in a landscape scale is pretty much the type of work that we're trying to do with corporates, but also with local government and other partners. So, is it working?
That's not a...
What is this? Oh, that's the... So ignore whatever I did there.
Brent, next door, is really cursing because his presentation came back and forth.
Which is where you move this thing? Okay, don't worry, that's fine. I'll just keep going. Okay, so our challenge is to try to operate the IT equipment first, and then we can actually get going with the presentation. Our challenge as the conservation community and society, and this is the entrenching in, is despite our best intentions and efforts, there's little awareness and understanding in broader society about the value of intact ecosystems for human well-being. It's a central message coming a lot across. There's a lot of frustrations being put out there about are we really getting the message across? Are we really getting the understanding across? And to a large extent, where we are succeeding, we're succeeding in this little piece of the landscape, that little project on the ground. Are we really getting to scale with these things? And we're dealing with complexity. I think that one of the things that we keep misunderstanding, and Paul was alluding to in his presentation, Andrew to a large extent in your presentation, he's trying to deal with a number of different issues. You're trying to tackle complexity and the way that things are interlinked. And there's not enough recognition given to that across different scales and across different systems. And there's little recognition of this in terms of the interdependencies between these systems. So we try to come in on a social development project, but we forget about the feedback loops into all other aspects of the system we're dealing with. And there's little understanding of the changes that are happening, that I've spoken about in terms of the feedback loops. And these changes are resulting in massive risk, and we'll speak about the risk language now. So our traditional view of conservation is this. We want to look at nice landscapes, we want to look at species being conserved, but how do we actually make conservation and sustainable development work in multiple use, multifunctional landscapes? That's our reality. It's the large, extensive sugar landscapes, large, extensive plantation landscapes, and some biodiversity, some natural infrastructure hanging on by the fingernails. In other parts of the landscapes, you do have large intact systems, but some of them are degraded from different types of land use. And how do we make conservation and sustainable development work when there are massive changes at the moment, and linked to those changes, massive risks? And we'll come to that now. So across the country, we have these 4 areas of food, water, and energy coming together around ecological infrastructure, and a large impacts taking place, and not enough recognition of the trade-offs that are needed between them. And we need to be able to move from an understanding that we impacting on these biodiversity landscapes to how we take these production landscapes and ensure resilience that can ensure biodiversity persisting, ensure this critical ecological functioning persisting, the water being delivered, good clean water at the right time of the year being delivered downstream. We can derive the energy requirements for the future and derive the food security. How do we do that? So it's about risk management to some extent. Again, we can paint this in different ways, but we're getting people living in areas that are subject to extreme events. We're getting people putting in high economic value developments in areas that are subject to extreme events. We're finding that there's an increase in the number of extreme events that is taking place, but combined with that, and we know this, and I'm speaking to the audience understands this, we are taking away the buffering capacity in ecosystems by eroding those ecosystems. A classic case would be what happened on the coastal in the Belito area a couple of years ago. When you build so close into the dune system that when the big storm event comes through, you've got no buffering capacity and everything gets washed away, and people complain because they've lost high value systems and they want to now put concrete infrastructure back in place. And when you get these linkages between global climate changes and related events with land use change impacts and the loss of the buffering capacity, you get massive change. So this was just quickly taken from a report done in Eden District Municipality, which I'll allude to later, and it's from the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, and it showed the increase in the number of reported flood and wildfire events around the world on different continents. Now you can obviously there was a baseline of very, very little reporting, but over time this wasn't just a reporting capacity increasing, it was actually the number of events increasing over time because we're facing these risks. So what are these resilient landscapes? How do we fund ourselves as society? And I'm not saying it's us and them, it's ourselves, because we're all trying to benefit in one way or another from this work that we're doing, and we're trying to benefit from these systems that are out there. How do we find these resilient landscapes that can produce multiple goods and services, do not compromise the functionality of these systems, both the social and ecological systems? The diagram that Andrew had up front is very true, that the sort of integration, interdependency of these systems. How do we find the systems that can absorb shocks and continue to maintain functionality? And how do we ensure that there's effective governance? So it's about understanding our risks in these landscapes from a systemic perspective and from the various aspects of socioeconomic, ecological, and governance systems. What are the actual drivers of these risks, and what are the drivers and opportunities for resilience? And do we have enough understanding of them? We try and choose particular landscapes. In this case, most probably the easiest one is catchments. So you start related to some form of hook that's important to people, and water is the biggest hook. And then we understand the different roles of different stakeholders in those landscapes. And we try and understand who can contribute what, who's impacting, who can reduce impacts, who can bring capacity and resources, and how do we bring people working on that together. So instead of one corporate just funding one school in an area, how do you bring a couple of corporates together with partners that can actually get to schools at scale and actually impact the schooling system and some of the challenges in that, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's teaching capacity, or whatever it might be. And then out of that, how do we get people to start making these contributions to realize the shared value creation? And the emphasis here is on cooperative governance, collaborative governance, and sharing of the risk and sharing of the resources to enable the shared value, because we're in this together. I think gone are the days when people are going on this alone, and we're trying to make this go, whether it's as conservation sector, social development sector, local government trying to put projects in place. Actually, we've got to do this together because it's our future together. So I'm just going to move on to some of the work that we're trying to do in this. I apologize for the slides come out. But the work that we're trying to do as WWF, then move into some of the case studies, we're looking at some of the approaches we want to take. So it's about securing the ecological infrastructure, ecosystem stewardship in its core. Biodiversity stewardship is one of the tools in that. Land use planning and decision making might be another one. It's about thinking about how food is produced in the landscape, how energy is produced, where are the coal mines going, are they going in the right areas, should they not be in certain catchments, only in others, because those are priority water supply catchments. And how do you find a way to make the integration and trade-offs in that? WWF has got a three-pronged approach to this. It's not rocket science, it's just a way we structure ourselves at the moment. We've got a whole group of work that's happening about securing ecological infrastructure, protecting the biodiversity in the landscape. It's about working with supply chains, whether it's agricultural food commodities, whether it's fibre, whether it's fisheries, for example, or whether it's just in the area of working directly with the water sector. And then the third element to that is how do we build resilience in the face of climate change and climate adaptation. So if you took this into a conceptual landscape, we are trying to understand how we take our various programs of work around catchment stewardship, water stewardship with corporates, getting them to understand water risks, not directly only to their operations, but also to their supply chains. What are the water risks and how do you deal with that? How the corporates have been finding a way to do that? How do you look at sustainable agriculture in the landscape, sustainable fibre supply, a low carbon energy future? How do we move and shift away from coal? If we're going to keep going with coal, what are the best ways to do that? And there's a massive challenge with DMR, as most people know. And then we continue with that. And the one aspect here is the integration between catchments and the coast. So a couple of weeks ago I was in a workshop with the prawn trawl fisheries, and there was clear work on the table there that for the first time they're starting to engage stakeholders from catchments to understand how catchment management is having an impact on the fisheries in terms of the estuarine breeding areas and obviously down into the Tugela banks themselves and other areas. And that came out again this morning in the presentation on St. Lucia. How do you actually get involved in catchment management to actually deal with a lot of the issues that St. Lucia is facing, not just directly on site? So an example in the Umgeni river system and working with different partners, and I put these up as corporate partners that we've got some form of formal partnerships already or partnerships that we want to enter into, is how do we understand the Umgeni river system in terms of all its land uses taking place, and some of them are land uses that have been done sustainably and others have been done unsustainably. How do we work with partners like Mondi, SAPI and NCT to say, is there a way that you can contribute from a resilience perspective in plantation forestry? How do we put some pressure on the sugar sector, which doesn't seem to be very open to direct engagement with them? We go in on the buyer side like Coca-Cola and actually drive sustainability back through the supply chain, because we've got some big issues with regard to sugar and catchment management. How do we work with communities? The one aspect that's missing from this diagram, knowing that there's certain areas of the Umgeni and the Voti catchments have got large communal areas, will be another aspect of that. And then another sector that we look at is the insurance sector. So quite a bit of our work around this has been with Suntown, and them understanding that actually the risk profiles are actually getting quite serious. And in the long term, people are predicting that if things continue the way they are, you won't have an insurance industry anymore because of the large amount of payouts that are taking place. You just got to think of what's going to happen with insurance payouts in the Eastern Cape after what just happened, and how much of that impact on people was because development took place in the wrong areas, or they didn't respect the buffering capacity that was needed in those ecosystems. So when you go to the Eden District Municipality in the Southern Cape, some work was done there with CSR, and this again isn't rocket science, but it's just trying to prove the argument and re-emphasize the argument again. Climate change is driving, climate changes are driving risks higher. So this is seen in the number of the increase in the number of high fire risk periods. So the number of periods where for 3 days or longer fire risk remains at a high level, and there's an increase in the number of those, the frequency of those. Increase in the frequency of intense rainfall days that's happening, and extreme wave events. So those are coming up. And then combine that with ecological buffering capacity that's been undermined. What you're starting to see is that invasive alien plants increasing the catchments is increasing the fire risk. So the insurance sector is saying, okay, what does that mean for us? Okay, when these two are coming together. So you've got the increase in the number of fire risk days, but increase in the fuel source that's in the landscape that's unmanaged. How do we deal with that together? Increase changes in land cover and the changes in the surface water flows and the loss of fall dunes correlated with big wave events can have big impacts. So obviously the intervention, which we keep saying all the time, is what restoration and management can be put in place to improve the ecological buffering capacity of these systems. And just by responding to the land use impacts, the land use change impacts, you can go a long way to buffering ourselves, or we can go a long way to buffering ourselves against future climate change. knowing that mitigation efforts are really not doing that well, we need to increase our adaptation capacity. And one of the best ways to do that is to get back to the basics around ecosystems and the importance to us. And that's it from WWF. Sorry.
Great, we've got time for some questions? Some comments?
On the left behind you.
Right, sorry.
Behind you?
Behind you, really.
The one who stole your seat.
That's why I'm ignoring you, probably. Okay.
Hi.